Hello again, guys. I'm back with Matt Heusser with me, talking with me on Techno Talks with Lalit session. Hello, Matt. How are you doing?
Hello, Liz. I'm fine, thanks. It's good
So,
to be here.
yeah, pleasure meeting you again after cast.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we are meeting in person again. Uh, in case you don't know Matt, you should just Google his name, and I'm really not going to spend more time on his introduction. You should really know him by now.
Oh, thank you.
Coming straight to the topic, Matt. Uh, I'm curious to know about your topic for tomorrow.
Yep.
How to talk about coverage. I mean, I have rarely seen much talk about coverages, how to talk about coverage, and I'm really curious
Well,
to know about it.
there's a couple of things that I think are kind of colliding. So, when Agile came out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Testers, pre-Agile, testers were sort of in a corner. We got some documentation that was out of date. We got some software that was late, and we were told, test it all in a week. And we developed all these techniques, right? We learned quick attacks, we learned strategies, we learned coverage models, we learned how to talk about risk-based testing.
Mm-hmm.
And the Agile movement kind of said, at the end-to-end testing level, kind of said, well, if we just put everybody in the same room, and we talk about it before we even build it, about what could go wrong, and then we get everybody's ideas, like, oh, we'll probably be fine, right? This is probably good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, we're going to add some engineering practices so the code is of higher quality. And a lot of the Agile literature doesn't really talk about traditional classic testing technique.
Mm-hmm.
And that they got away with it. That was okay because just getting everyone in the same room and having a conversation was a huge win.
Mm-hmm.
But I still like to sort of pull out that old bag and look in there and see what are some valuable things. It's part of my role in the Agile test community, to the extent that I have a role, is in kind of is actually bridging those two, actually talking about testing in an Agile context. I think anyway. So one of the things that we lost was this idea of coverage, and there's very specific reasons for that. So we used to say, here's our million ideas, and we've modeled them in this way, and we visualized them in that way, and you can see them. But we only have a month, so we're going to narrow them down, and then we'll ship at the end of our testing phase. We don't really have a testing phase anymore.
Exactly.
And the ideal that many teams are pursuing, and I do not pursue this, but many organizations are pursuing an ideal where when you commit code, it automatically runs through a set of checks, is promoted to a staging environment, and if it runs through a second set of tests, it's automatically promoted to production within 20 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to push the roll to prod button. It automatically goes out in some orgs. Some organizations want take it all the way to staging automatically, and you get an email or something, it's passed, and then you batch a few features up or a few commits up, and then you press the push button. And that is sort of, we're just going to run all the things, and if all the things pass, you push it. And we haven't really, those organizations don't talk about different ways to model coverage. So maybe they talk about statement coverage, measured lines of code executed by unit tests.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of features or requirements or risks, this idea of there's a whole lot of risks that aren't automatable. And have you covered them? Have you covered them lately? What is the impact if they go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Really simple example, file print.
Mm-hmm.
Print to PDF. Show me a Selenium shop that has automated that. Well, you can't, because Selenium doesn't have the ability to drive the menus of the core operating system.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't. So when we lose the idea of the models, we're just going to automate all the things. The things that we can't automate, we just forget to do. So it's actually pushing us toward forgetting about, don't worry about coverage, which is fine up until someone says, why didn't QA find that bug?
Okay.
Right? Why didn't test find that bug? Why do we have that bug? Maybe you're true Agile shop and it's a whole team thing. Why did that bug get created and slip through? Fine. But someone's asking the question. And my general goal when I work with teams, because I'm going to get that question, is to be able to show something, some model of risk, and say, ideally, yep, that risk is below our cut line. So we decided to invest 20% of our time in testing of the whole team, and we did. We modeled the risks, and we didn't have time to do those things. Otherwise, it would have slowed development down. So that was agreed on. And we identified that risk, and look here, it's below our cut line. We didn't have time. So we had a conversation about priorities. Would you have preferred that one of the things up here had gone wrong and we didn't test for it? Or should we spend more time testing? No, we don't want to slow us down by testing more. And no, those bugs at the top are really bad. Okay, so we put a really good, responsible process in place, and we agreed that that was a risk worth taking. And ideally, you had that conversation a couple of times. When the new VP comes in, and the new VP says, I just heard the printing is broken, or whatever it is, the business analysts, the developers, the project managers, the development manager, your customers stand up and educate the VP because they know the system.
Okay.
Now, if the question never gets asked, if you're trusted, if the issue comes up and people say, well, that might be something to look into next time, but we trust you, maybe you don't need to model coverage, but it's a really good tool for your tool belt.
Indeed. However, I share your notion that this notion of coverage is somehow getting lost or have been lost already in most of the organizations. What challenges do you think people will need to face to introduce the idea of coverage once again in agile context?
Well, basically, does it solve a problem that you have? So most organizations I work with have this many risks and they have this much time. So I think it's Dr. Kaner in the BBST course who came up with that, right? And the question is, how do we get our most powerful test ideas to cover our biggest risks? So first you got to recognize that that's a problem. Many of the managers, people with budget that I've talked to, even testers, have this idea of all of the tests, like whether it's automation or whether it's a series of cases or whether it's a series of sessions. Those are all of the tests, and we need to get all of the tests done.
I will hold your thought here. Very important question in my opinion. Now, in the days where people are leaning more and more towards automation, somehow I feel that that's also the contributing factor of coverage losing its ground.
I completely agree, because you can't. So what you should do, we did this at Social Text. We had a web page. Here are all the things we didn't or couldn't automate because our technology doesn't support it yet. And what you should be doing is coming back to that list. Here's a good example. You come back to that list every now and again and you say, did anything around that code change? Did Microsoft's new browser impact any of that? How long has it been since we've run those things? And if we have sort of an aging, or maybe you put the last date you run it, and maybe you just sort and you just run the oldest ones the oldest 5 run every sprint, and you go through all of them in every 20 sprints. Only takes you a couple of hours. Maybe you run them every morning. Maybe you run them in production, right? But the human natural tendency is I couldn't automate it, so I'm going to forget about it, and then I can just run all the things. Then I don't have to track coverage, and that's really unfortunate, right? So the first thing we got to do is recognize that we're not running all of it. And that it's not a question of done or not done. All the test cases, or none of them. But a question of how hard do I turn the dial. I can give me more time, I'll always find you more risks.
Okay.
So you've got to get to the point where you say, I think we've invested the appropriate amount of time in testing.
Very interesting. Very much of a Matt Heusser idea, and I look forward to attend it in person and see. I might have more questions for you there. I wouldn't spill more beans about your talk tomorrow. I really want people to attend it and ask more questions. How are you finding Agile testing days so far?
This year is fantastic. It's just a bunch of, this is my 5th year, I think. A bunch of old friends you get to see, some new friends you get to make. Having a lot of fun, trying to be more sort of balanced, so social time plus in the sessions, plus a little bit of exercise. You know what I'm stealing from to get all that? What am I stealing from to get that? So I'm trying to balance my life out. I'm getting the time for social time. I'm getting the time for exercise. I'm getting the time for attend sessions. What's missing? Take a guess.
Sleep.
Sleep, you got it, right.
Okay,
so the problem with Agile testing days, if it is a problem, is that the bar has a gravitational pull. And you try to leave the bar at midnight and someone says, "Oh, let me buy you a drink, Matt. I want to hear blah, 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 blah." And you suck back in. And you leave at 2 a.m. And what you do is you go back to your room and you're like, oh, maybe I can just check my email. Don't check your email.
I did.
Right,
That's why I went
I have no skill.
3 o'clock in night.
I have no discipline. So that's the biggest problem in agile testing is having too much fun. Right.
Interesting. Cool. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. We will keep discussing this stuff, and it's really great meeting you again.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the SlideShare link when this is over, so your audience can get that.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely. We'll be sharing it.
And you know, to steal a line from somebody else, Newton said he built on the shoulders of giants. A lot of these are techniques, mind maps, decision trees, low-tech testing dashboard. You know, I think that I'm just sort of collecting a bunch of techniques that have been helpful to me over the years and putting them in context. Hopefully, slides help. I might write an article on it sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks for pulling me out for the interview. This is great.
Pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking with you. See you around. Thank you, everyone. More awesome stuff in line. Bye.